economic development and cooperation. And in that area, definitely, we have a lot to offer. So they were particularly keen on hearing what we had to say. Colombia was a different kind of challenge because they had not been, unfortunately, very supportive. When Pahalgam happened, there was initially no statement. When Sindoor happened, to our surprise and shock, they had issued a statement expressing condolences to victims in Pakistan, who, as we all know, were terrorists, rather than the victims of terrorism in India. So we decided that that was a really important challenge. I took the opportunity of an opening day press conference to express my public disappointment with the statement and explain that, if there is a need for us to explain our position better to the Colombians, we will do so. And by next morning, I'm very pleased to say, when we met the acting foreign minister, she announced that they had withdrawn that statement and that they would speak much more positively of us, which she did. And then, of course, similar meetings with the president of the National Assembly and the sort of legislative infrastructure in Colombia also came through very, very positively. And we were able, again, to feel well received and well understood and well supported. Brazil was essentially very intense because we arrived on a Sunday when obviously not much is possible in terms of meetings. I had a couple of informal meetings with diplomats I knew previously, but today was a very full, intense day where we had, starting off with the diplomatic advisor to the president, who's himself a longest serving foreign minister in Brazilian history, former defense minister as well, very, very senior figure here. And I fortunately knew him 30 years ago when he was ambassador to the UN, and we've stayed in touch intermittently. So it was an easier conversation to have, and we gave the message of our expectation of Brazilian understanding and solidarity at this challenging time, which we got. Subsequently, we met with the heads of both the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and separately the head of the Lower House Foreign Relations Committee. The head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is also the chairman of the India-Brazil Friendship Group, and he was very positive, understandably. The second discussion, we got good questions from them, and that too went very, very well. Then we had the vice president. We also met with the foreign minister, the acting foreign minister earlier, and the acting foreign minister of Colombia had been again very receptive to our message, heard us out, and accepted fully our side of what had happened, and said that Brazil would indeed take this forward. And then we met the vice president of the country, who is not just the number two in their system, unlike ours. The vice president also is a minister and is the Minister for Trade and Industry. He is a former governor of a state called Sao Paulo, the most populous state, where there is a tremendous amount of interest in Indian entrepreneurship and business. There's a big aluminium factory there and so on. And so again, very warm and friendly, and the conversation went on for about an hour, during which he ended up expressing completely strong and unconditional solidarity with India in its struggle against terrorism. So I must say, looking back on these 4 days, we have been blessed and fortunate that we had really successful meetings everywhere. The next stage is Washington, DC. We had already been to New York on our way into Guyana. We stopped via New York in transit, and we went to the 9/11 memorial to victims of terrorism to show that that we were coming on this crusade, as it were, against terrorism. And that was a good symbolic gesture to begin with. But we're not going back to New York. We're now only in Washington. And in Washington, we have meetings set up with the entire range of public opinion in Washington, government officials, legislators, that is senators and congressmen, various committees in the House and the Senate, think tanks who are very influential in Washington, particularly those focusing on foreign policy, media, and some public addresses, like, for example, the National Press Club, where I'll be holding a press conference with some of my colleagues. There's going to be an event at the embassy, in fact, two events at the embassy, one for the Indian community on one evening, and another evening there's going to be an event which will actually showcase India's connection with the sort of influential opinion makers across Washington, some 80 to 100 guests. These are not mainly Indians. Indians are mainly coming on the 4th. So it's a very interesting mix of people, and I will say that a mix of functions. I beg your pardon, and I will say that it's going to be fairly demanding. I have been asked to spend, though some of my colleagues will leave on the morning of Friday the 6th. I've been asked to spend the rest of the day giving 7 or 8 interviews to individual American channels and broadcasters, podcasters, and so on. So that will also give us an opportunity to get our message out. Um, it's a challenging environment. America is a very crowded media space. It's the world news generator, and for them, therefore, our story may not be top of the mind, but if we can get the attention of those who care about South Asia.
क्या हो गया भाई?
भैया, आपसे सीखकर म्यूचुअल फंड्स में एसआईपी शुरू की थी, लेकिन कभी-कभी अपडेट्स देखकर मेरा मन भटकने लगता है।
सुन, ये लिफ्ट जब ऊपर नीचे जाती है तो तू निकल जाता है।
नहीं भैया, यही तो सही मंजिल तक ले जाती है।
तो बस म्यूचुअल फंड्स का भी यही है, डटे रहेगा तो तू भी अपने सपनों के पास पहुंच सकता है।
हाँ, बिल्कुल आपकी तरह।
सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Because frankly, the Security Council, in a sense, is a small part of our relationship with the US, which is huge, whether it comes to trade, whether it comes to defense, whether it comes to intelligence sharing, whether it comes to our participation in the Quad, in the G20. There are just so many avenues in which we cooperate with the US. And then there is the phenomenally important Indian American community. Some 4 to 5 million people of Indian descent in America, who are the largest, most successful ethnic group when it comes to median income and so on. This is a very, very important community. And for us, we will do our very best, obviously, to get our message out to whoever in the US is prepared to listen. It's no accident that the Pakistanis have also sent a delegation abroad, but they're not going to as many countries as the Indian delegations are. They're focusing on what they consider a few key capitals, namely Washington, Brussels, London. That seems to be the thrust of the Pakistani effort. We have gone to all those capitals and more. But when I say we, I don't mean just me, all the other MP delegations. But in Washington, we'll have the interesting phenomenon of the Pakistani delegation in America on almost exactly the same dates. They've been in New York, I believe, today and tomorrow they'll be in New York. Thereafter, yesterday and today, I beg your pardon, in New York. Tomorrow onwards, they will be in Washington while we are in Washington on the same dates. So there's going to be some perhaps increase in interest because of the fact there are two dueling delegations, as it were, in the same city.
So since this India-Pakistan war, United States is one country that has always been on headlines because of Donald Trump, who has been claiming a mediation or getting a ceasefire between the two countries. During our engagements there, will this come up?
How do I know what will come up, Ayushi? We'll have to wait and see what questions people ask. Look, we have enormous respect for the American presidency, and we will speak with that respect in mind. But broadly speaking, our understanding is a bit different. We had consistently said from the very beginning on May 7th that we are not interested in prolonging conflict. This is not the opening salvo in some sort of war. All it is retribution against the terrorists, period. If Pakistan had not reacted, we would not react. We would listen. If they hit, we'll hit. If they stop, we'll stop. We don't want war. We want to focus on our growth and development. This message was given to everybody. Our foreign minister was getting calls from other foreign ministers. He was saying the same thing. So in that sense, no one needed to persuade us to stop. We had already said stop. So if there was any persuasion by American president, to persuaded, because we don't want war. We want to focus on development. That's the basic message.
So Western media seemed to have ignored India's proof of damage. What will you say on Western media hypocrisy, who even called terrorists as unknown? And since you are going to give interviews there, are you going to change?
Let's wait and see till I actually encounter the Western media rather than telling the Indian media first. But thank you, Aishi, for the question. I'm forewarned.
Last question. Washington DC also holds headquarters of big financial institutions, World Bank.
And I'm, yeah.
World Bank recently unveiled $1 billion long financial support to Pakistan, and also bailed out recently. What is your assessment on that?
We don't judge any country, its development, all the sort of well-being of the poorest of the poor in any country. But if that money simply enables Pakistan to divert more resources to supporting terrorists, to arming themselves, to attacks and so on, there are bodies in which India does have some influence. I hope they will both be told by our diplomats there that it is extremely important to have complete safeguards so that this money spends the way it's supposed to be spent. Let's see, we're going to European defense. Somebody comes and gives 20 happily. Objection is to the misuse of financial freedoms made possible by this assistance.
So there was also a terror attack in USA in border. What do you say on that?
Well, we immediately reacted as soon as we saw the reports. The delegation I consulted, and I issued a tweet, which they've already seen. And we endorsed the Secretary of State's message, which is terrorism has no place in our country, and terrorism has no place in either his country or ours. When we don't believe that terrorism should have any place in any civilized nation. That message is something we underscore when we get to America.
Thank you so much.
Look, I think the trips were all amazing welcome, met everybody, the president, the vice president, who is the former